They called it a town hall, but it looked more like a forgotten church, the kind that absorbed heat through its cracked windows and let secrets ferment in the humid air. I remember the wooden benches, cold, sticky, etched with initials, and the way dust pinwheeled under the light as if illuminated just to bear witness to my humiliation. It was July, Mumbai's monsoon was in full swing, and I could feel the dampness clinging everywhere, pressing close like disapproval. My mother sat 3 rows from the front, her lips pursed, a nervous habit whenever she thought I might embarrass her. She fiddled with her thin gold bangle, eyes refusing to meet mine. My father stood near the pulpit with his hands jammed awkwardly in his pockets, his entire frame radiating discomfort. This was supposed to be the community's career and future night for students. They had invited all the young people nearing graduation, and as usual in our suburb, the future only had 3 acceptable shapes: medicine, engineering, or sensible business. When my name was called, I stepped up, feeling a collective inhale, the thick anticipation of something about to go off track. I clutched my notebook. My school shirt was damp under my arms. My heart thrummed with the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would see what I saw. Rohan D'Souza, the moderator, Mr. Fernandes, intoned. He was one of those men with a talent for sucking joy out of a room with little more than a well-timed frown. "Let's hear what you plan to do." "I want to be a photographer," I said, my voice barely louder than the monsoon outside. Somebody tittered, Mrs. Lobo, who still wore her St. Anne's staff badge even though she'd retired a decade ago, let out a little gasp. My cousin Savio, slinking in the back, started to laugh, the sharp, mean kind that demands others join in. "My son wants to take pictures," my mother cut in, voice brittle, "but of course he's looking into engineering." I shook my head quietly, but someone at the front nodded as if I'd agreed. I tried harder. "I'm serious. I want to travel, see the world, tell stories with my camera, maybe even work for National Geographic one day." Or, I trailed off. The room was still. The rain pounded harder against the glass. Mr. Fernandes gave a cough, signaling both derision and end to this tangent. "Rohan, that's all well and good as a hobby," he said, "but have you thought about your livelihood? Photography is for tourists, not for a good-going Catholic boy." The crowd smiled at his joke. "What will you tell your wife's father one day, that you shoot pictures for pocket money?" The laughter trickled in this time, a wave that started with the bold and rippled out to the hesitant. Savio was doubled over, wheezing. I glanced at my father. I wanted a sign, a nod, anything, but he just looked at his shoes. Someone in the next row hissed, "Duffer," and I flushed, neck prickly with humiliation. When the meeting ended, I walked home alone in the rain, letting my camera case knock against my hip, while thunder followed me like a jeering crowd. That night, I sat on the parapet of our building, watching the city go about its business. Elsewhere, neon flickered on rain-streaked glass. Boys my age played cricket under a lone streetlight, their yells echoing in the night. I pressed my camera's cold body to my chest. For the first time, the lens felt more like a shield than a dream. Inside, my parents argued in low, tired voices. In their echoes, I heard years of sacrifice, the unspoken debts, the worry that hard work would unravel in just one foolish boy's fantasy. Maybe I should have felt guiltier, but mostly I felt a knot turning inside me, tightening every time someone called me ridiculous, lazy, absent-minded. I decided I'd find out what my dream was worth, no matter the cost. Years passed. Mumbai changed, as it always does, folding the past into new layers of noise and life. I took a job at a small wedding studio to save money, days color-correcting awkward smiles, nights racing through the city for any spare gig I could find. Photojournalists from faraway lands haunted my nights, their images appearing in battered magazines I guarded like treasure. My friends left for university, MIT in Pune, St. Xavier's, a cousin off to Dubai. At family gatherings, they asked about my job, pausing after the word as if it might offend some invisible guest. My father's drinking grew worse. My mother retreated behind prayers. I met Sonal at a street protest where I was shooting on assignment for a local English weekly. She was giving water to children, her palms stained with ink from her protest sign. We talked in the shade of a neem tree while the crowd chanted slogans around us. She asked what I really wanted to shoot, and for the first time I answered honestly, everything, the way life fights against this city. The beauty of things nobody sees. She nodded, then leaned in, saying, "You know, every time you show someone truth, you change a little bit of history, but most people won't thank you for it." She was right. I submitted work to competitions, pitched editors who didn't respond, hustled for one-off assignments. I lived off Vada Pav and hope. There were dry months, cameras pawned, rent unpaid, uncles shaking their heads when they passed me on the street. Many nights I doubted myself. Most of all, I feared becoming a cautionary tale, squinting at the world through glass while everyone else lived inside it. But there were moments when the world cracked open, a fisherman hauling his nets through fog on Mahim Beach, schoolgirls leaping puddles in the slums, elderly lovers sharing an umbrella under the gateway. Every frame I captured thrilled me, even when nobody else cared. I kept shooting, because photographing beauty felt holy in a city determined to wear people down. It was Sonal who passed me the link for the International Press Photo Prize. "What's the worst that could happen?" she said, eyeing me over her mug of chai. I submitted a series called Invisible Mumbai, a collection of photographs chronicling the migrant workers, rackpickers, sweepers, maids, food vendors, whose stories I'd followed for 2 years. With every shot, I worried they would find it insufficient, too plain, too raw. Then, one afternoon, sweating in my one-room Antari apartment, I opened an email that made me weak in the knees. I had won. Not just an honorable mention, but the top award. My photographs would be flown to New York and shown alongside the world's greatest living photojournalists. I remember calling Sonal, sputtering so incoherently that she thought there'd been a fire. For a moment, the world felt lighter. The next year was a blur: exhibits, magazine spreads, invitations to speak, workshops in places I'd only dreamt of. My name started to pop up in articles, my inbox filled with commissions. I had enough money to settle my parents' debts, though I signed the checks anonymously, not ready to expose that part of myself yet. I rarely went back to our old neighborhood. There was always something unresolved, a question that knotted inside me on days when the city recalled my own failures. But then came the invitation. Mr. Fernandes, older now but unmistakable, called one evening as I edited photos in my Juhu flat. "Rohan," he said with the same pinched formality, "there's an award our church wants to give you, Community Pride. Very prestigious, it would mean a lot if you came." At first I wanted to laugh, but a voice edged with something like humility coaxed me toward acceptance. He sounded, just barely, like a man who regretted. I called Sonal. We had married the year before and she was 7 months pregnant. She said, "You have to go, not for them, for you, let them see." And so in the thick, sticky heat of another Mumbai summer, I returned. The drive was surreal. The city shimmered, both familiar and foreign. Trees I'd climbed as a child had been dwarfed by new towers. The air was heavy with jasmine and petrol fumes. I wore my best shirt and carried my gear, old, battered, but wholly, tucked under my arm. Darkness had fallen when I walked up the broken steps to the church. The windows glowed, and as I passed through the doors, I felt the gaze of 100 pairs of eyes prickling over my skin. Mr. Fernandes greeted me near the altar. He shook my hand with the gentle pressure of an apology. "Thank you for coming, Rohan," he said, his voice unsteady. Mrs. Lobo pursed her lips, and even Savio, now balding, hovered next to the punch bowl, his laughter long gone. The event was already in full swing. Children sang, stacks of books and certificates balanced on card tables. My parents sat in their usual seats. My mother dabbed at her eyes. My father fidgeted with his watch. I was ushered forward and Mr. Fernandes cleared his throat. "Tonight we honor a boy, well, a man now, who taught us something about dreams." There was a polite ripple, a shuffling of feet. "You've seen his pictures in magazines, in exhibitions, perhaps on the news, but tonight he has brought us something special." They expected a speech, but I decided on something else. I gestured to Sonal, who set up the projector and dimmed the lights. "If you'll allow me, I'd like to show you what my lens has seen." The whir of the machine was the only sound. Against the old, crumbling plaster, the faces of Mumbai's invisible people appeared one by one. A young boy beaming as he swept plastic cups off Chowpatty Beach, a mother kissing her child in a tarpaulin tent. A fisherman, his skin etched with salt and sunlight, gazing out over the sea. There was laughter in some photos, defiance in others. Even silence became visible, the quiet dignity of survival. I watched their faces as the images shifted. Mrs. Lobo, usually so stern, pressed a kerchief to her trembling mouth. Savio lowered his eyes. My mother reached for my father's hand and squeezed it just once. The slideshow ended on a single photograph, an elderly woman lighting votive candles in this very church, prayers flickering in her eyes. The room was utterly still. I spoke quietly. "You all thought photography was a joke, a distraction. But these faces, they are Mumbai. We live among them. They are as real as you or me. I've watched them suffer, hope, and prevail. I've been welcomed into their lives. And through their stories, I found my own courage. I am grateful for the struggle, even for the disbelief. It made me work harder. It made this moment possible. For a beat, nobody spoke. Then, surprisingly, Savio started clapping, hesitant at first, like a test. Mrs. Lobo followed, dabbing her eyes. Applause swelled, awkward, then earnest. My mother stood and moved to the aisle as if she might rush up and hug me, her pride doubled over with long years of fear. Afterwards, people came to touch my hand to tell me they'd been wrong. Some just looked into my eyes and nodded, saying nothing. My father pressed a palm over mine as if passing something fragile and precious. In his eyes I saw a rare glint of peace. That night Sonal and I sat on the old church steps. She leaned her head against my shoulder, her breathing slow and strong. My heart felt full, not with victory but with relief. I'd wanted so desperately for my dream to mean something. Maybe finally it did. In the months that followed, things didn't become simple. There were still critics, jealousies, and old wounds that healed slowly. But something had changed in the old neighborhood, a shifting of weight. When someone else's child said they wanted to be an artist, a musician, a writer, I heard less laughter, more questions, more possibility. Sometimes on restless nights, I walked the old streets with my camera, capturing the hush of midnight Mumbai, the light from windows, the shape of hope behind every door. I'd find myself tracing my path back to those cracked church steps, the stones cool beneath my feet. I'd close my eyes and breathe in the thick, living air, heat, jasmine, rain, memory, listening to the city that once swept me aside, now alive with a new song. And in each quiet moment I remembered, redemption is not glory or fame. It is returning change to the seat where you once sat in shame, and finding at last the courage to look everyone in the eye.